The sun blazed high in the sky, casting golden hues over the bustling streets of the market. The air was thick with the scent of spices, roasted plantains, and freshly fried akara. Among the cacophony of voices and the shuffling of hurried feet, Amaka stood behind her small wooden stall, stirring a large pot of steaming jollof rice. Her dark skin glistened with sweat as she wiped her brow with the edge of her wrapper. At 28, she had spent years in this very spot, selling food to traders, workers, and students. Though her business kept her afloat, it was never enough to break free from the grip of poverty. As the eldest of 5 siblings, she carried the weight of her family's survival on her shoulders. Their mother was weak and their father had long abandoned them. Every naira she earned went into providing food, paying rent, and ensuring her younger siblings could attend school. That afternoon, as the market hummed with life, an elderly woman appeared before her stall. She was wrapped in a faded blue wrapper, her feet dusty from the journey, and a wooden staff in her trembling hands. Her face, marked by deep wrinkles, held eyes that seemed to peer into Amaka's soul. "Daughter, may I have something to eat?" the woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Amaka's fingers tightened around the wooden spoon she held. She glanced at her remaining food. There wasn't much left, barely enough for her siblings' dinner. But something in the old woman's eyes softened her resolve. She reached for a clean plate and scooped a generous portion of rice, adding a piece of meat, though she hesitated. "Here, Mama," she said with a warm smile. "Eat well." The woman took the plate and settled on a stool nearby. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, while Amaka watched in silence. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked at Amaka with a knowing smile. "You have a kind heart, child," she said. "Kindness never goes unnoticed. Because of your generosity, the gods have chosen to bless you." Amaka blinked, confused. Before she could speak, the old woman reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out a delicate golden necklace. Dangling from its thin chain was a small emerald pendant, shimmering unnaturally in the waning sunlight. "This is a magic necklace," the woman whispered. "Wear it and fortune will follow. But be warned, every blessing comes with its own price." Amaka hesitated before accepting the necklace. "I don't understand," she began, but when she looked up, the old woman had vanished into the crowd as though she had never been there. That night, Amaka sat cross-legged on her sleeping mat, staring at the necklace. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. Was this truly magic? Or had she fallen for an elaborate trick? Curiosity overpowered doubt. She took a deep breath and fastened the necklace around her neck. A strange warmth spread through her body, like a ripple of energy flowing from the pendant. Something inside her whispered that her life was about to change. And she was right. Morning came with an unusual sense of lightness. Amaka stretched and stepped outside and gasped. Her small wooden stall had transformed overnight. It was now a proper shop, with sturdy walls, gleaming utensils, and a bold sign that read Amaka's Kitchen. "How?" she whispered, stepping forward in awe. Customers arrived before she could even process what had happened. The moment they tasted her food, their eyes lit up. "Amaka, your jollof rice is more delicious than ever," a man exclaimed. "What's your secret?" She had no answer. She hadn't changed anything, yet her food was richer, more flavorful. Word spread like wildfire and soon more people came. Within a week, she made more money than she had in an entire year. Within a month, she had saved enough to buy a proper restaurant in the heart of the market. Her family struggles faded like a bad dream. They moved into a spacious home with running water and electricity. Her siblings attended the best schools. Her mother, once frail, now glowed with newfound happiness. "Amaka, my daughter," her mother said one evening, eyes filled with gratitude. "How did this happen?" Amaka hesitated, fingers brushing the pendant at her throat. "I don't know, Mama. It's like magic." Yet, deep inside, she remembered the old woman's warning. Every blessing comes with its own price. For now, she chose to ignore it. Amaka's business flourished beyond her wildest dreams. Each morning, when she arrived at Amaka's Kitchen, the line of customers was already forming. The restaurant had become the pride of the marketplace, drawing in traders, businessmen, and even travelers from neighboring villages. At first, she struggled to keep up with the demand. She worked tirelessly, waking before dawn to prepare meals, overseeing the workers she had hired, and managing the finances. But strangely, no matter how much food she made, there was never a shortage. The pots seemed to replenish themselves, and her ingredients never ran out. She knew it had to be the necklace. Whenever she held the emerald pendant, she felt its warmth, as if it pulsed with energy. It was a silent force, whispering its presence in every fortune that came her way. With its power, Not only did her food taste better than anyone else's, but customers felt compelled to return. Her wealth grew rapidly. She purchased the adjacent shop and expanded her restaurant. She hired more workers, including young women who, like her, had struggled to make ends meet. Her success did not go unnoticed. Other food vendors watched in envy as their businesses dwindled, unable to compete with Amaka's extraordinary meals. "She must be using charms," they whispered. "This is not ordinary," said Mama Nkechi, a woman who had sold akara in the market for over 30 years. "No one rises this fast without some powerful juju." But Amaka paid them no mind. She was too busy reveling in her success. With her newfound wealth, she moved her family to a beautiful house in the city. It had tall iron gates, marble floors, and a kitchen twice the size of their old home. Her younger siblings now attended the best schools, wearing crisp uniforms and polished shoes. Their mother no longer had to struggle. She had everything she needed. One evening, Amaka returned home to find her mother sitting in the living room, staring at the necklace. "My daughter," she said, her voice heavy with worry, "are you sure this gift is not unnatural?" Amaka frowned. "Mama, what do you mean?" Her mother sighed. "Nothing in life comes without a price. Look at how quickly everything has changed for us. Are you sure this wealth is truly a blessing?" Amaka touched the pendant protectively. "Mama, I have worked hard for this. The gods have rewarded me." Her mother did not argue further, but her expression remained troubled. Days turned into weeks, and Amaka's wealth only grew. She now owned 2 more restaurants, each thriving beyond imagination. She drove the finest cars and wore the most exquisite fabrics. People whispered her name in admiration, calling her the Queen of Jollof. However, as her fortune soared, she began to notice strange occurrences. At night, she would hear whispers, soft murmurs that had no source. When she looked into mirrors, sometimes she would see flickers of shadows moving behind her. The warmth of the necklace, once comforting, had become an eerie heat that never faded. One evening, as she sat in her office reviewing her growing accounts, she heard a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. A young man entered, dressed in a neat but simple outfit. He bowed respectfully. "Madam Amaka, my name is Kalechi. I am a journalist. I would like to interview you about your success story." Amaka smiled. "Of course. Please have a seat." The interview began with the usual questions: how she started, her inspirations, her plans for the future. But then Kalechi leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There are rumors, madam," he said cautiously. "People say your wealth is unnatural, that perhaps you have help from otherworldly forces." Amaka's smile faded. "Do you believe in such things, Mr. Kalechi?" He hesitated. "I believe that success like yours is rare. And when things are rare, people ask questions." Amaka let out a soft chuckle. "Hard work and good business decisions, that's all." Kalechi nodded but did not look convinced. He stood up, bowing again. "Thank you for your time, madam." That night, Amaka found herself unable to sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying the journalist's words. "Do you have help from otherworldly forces?" She rose from bed and walked to the mirror. In the dim light, she studied her reflection. Her skin was still flawless, her eyes sharp, but there was something different. A flicker of something behind her. A presence. Her heart pounded as she turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. She clutched the necklace, swallowing hard. "It's just my imagination," she whispered. Yet deep down she was beginning to wonder. Amaka's prosperity continued to soar, yet with it came an unease she could no longer ignore. The whispers at night grew louder, no longer soft murmurs but clear voices speaking in a language she did not understand. When she looked into mirrors, she would sometimes catch glimpses of figures, shadows that should not have been there. She tried to push these thoughts aside, attributing them to stress and exhaustion. After all, managing multiple businesses was no easy feat, but as the days passed, the eerie occurrences became harder to dismiss. One evening, as she locked up her flagship restaurant, a cold gust of wind brushed against her skin despite the warm weather. She turned sharply and saw a figure standing at the far end of the street. The silhouette was tall and hooded, watching her. "Who's there?" she called, her voice stronger than she felt. The figure did not respond. Instead, it slowly raised a hand and pointed directly at her. A chill ran down Amaka's spine. She blinked, and in that instant the figure vanished. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she rushed to her car, locking the doors the moment she got in. She glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the figure behind her. But there was nothing, only the darkness of the empty street. At home, she found her mother waiting in the living room. The older woman's face was lined with concern. My daughter, something is not right, she said. I feel it. Amaka exhaled, rubbing her temples. Mama, I am just tired. Her mother shook her head. It is the necklace. Amaka stiffened. The necklace has brought us nothing but good fortune. But at what cost? Her mother's voice was barely above a whisper. We cannot accept a gift without knowing its true nature. Amaka sighed. Mama, please. Let us be grateful for what we have. But deep inside, fear coiled within her like a living thing. The next day, she sought out the old woman who had given her the necklace. She returned to the place where they had first met, but the woman was nowhere to be found. The other vendors whom she asked about the woman only shook their heads. Old woman, one of them repeated. No one like that sells food here. Frustration and dread mingled in Amaka's chest. Had she imagined it all? No. She remembered the woman's eyes, the warmth of her touch as she had placed the necklace around her neck. But if no one else had seen her, who was she? That night Amaka dreamed. She found herself in a vast open field under a crimson sky. A river of black water flowed before her, and in its reflection, she saw not her own face but the hollow eyes of an unfamiliar being. You wear what is not yours, a voice echoed from the shadows. A price must be paid. Amaka awoke with a start, her breath coming in short gasps. She clutched the necklace, now burning against her skin. Something was coming for her, and it wanted what it was owed. Amaka's unease grew stronger with each passing day. The whispers in the night had become voices, and the shadows that flickered in her mirrors now appeared even when her eyes were open. The once warm glow of the necklace now seared her skin, as if branding her with its presence. She began having nightmares, visions of faceless figures reaching for her, of an abyss swallowing her whole. In her dreams she was always running, always desperate to escape something unseen yet terrifyingly real. But no matter how fast she ran, the shadows always closed in. One evening, as she sat in her mansion study, poring over her business accounts, a gust of wind swept through the room, though all the windows were shut. The candle flames flickered wildly, casting elongated, ghostly silhouettes on the walls. Then she heard it. A deep, guttural voice, low and menacing, whispered her name. Amaka. She spun around, her pulse hammering in her throat. The room was empty. But the air was thick with something unseen, something watching. The necklace burned against her skin. She yanked it off and flung it onto the desk, panting as if she had just run for miles. For the first time she considered throwing it away. But even as she stared at it, she felt its pull, its undeniable hold on her. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. She hesitated before calling out, "Who is it?" "It's me, Mama." Relieved, she rushed to open the door. Her mother stepped inside, her brows knitted with worry. "You look pale, my daughter." Amaka swallowed hard. "Mama, something is wrong." Her mother sighed deeply, glancing at the necklace on the desk. "I have been praying for you, Amaka. I have warned you. This wealth, it is not ordinary." Amaka sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I thought it was a blessing. But now, I don't know." Her mother knelt before her, taking her hands. "Nothing comes without a price, my child. And I fear the price of this gift is one we cannot afford." Just then the candles in the room snuffed out, plunging them into darkness. A cold breeze howled through the air, and the room trembled as if shaken by unseen hands. Then came the voice again. "Give it back." Amaka screamed. The shadows on the walls moved unnaturally, twisting and writhing like living things. The air grew thick, making it hard to breathe. Her mother gripped her hands tightly. "Pray, Amaka," she urged. "We must fight this evil." Amaka tried to speak, but her throat tightened as if invisible fingers were choking her. The pressure built, and just as she felt she would collapse, her mother let out a powerful cry. "In the name of the Most High, leave my daughter alone." A deafening shriek filled the room. The walls trembled, and the shadows convulsed before retreating into the darkness. The air cleared, and Amaka gasped for breath, collapsing into her mother's arms. The necklace lay motionless on the desk, but now it looked different, darker, as if its glow had been snuffed out. Tears streamed down Amaka's face. "Mama, I have to get rid of it." Her mother nodded solemnly. "Yes, my child. Before it takes more than it has given." The next day, Amaka journeyed to the only place she could think of, her village's shrine. The old priest, a man with eyes that had seen generations pass, examined the necklace with grave silence. "This is no ordinary charm," he finally said. "It is a covenant, sealed with something ancient." Amaka trembled. "Can it be broken?" The priest looked at her long and hard before answering, Yes. But you must be willing to let go of everything it has given you. Her breath hitched. Her wealth, her success, her empire, would all vanish. Amaka, her mother said gently, you have seen what it brings. Is it worth it? Tears filled Amaka's eyes. She had worked so hard, dreamed so big. But she had also lived in fear, tormented by forces she could not understand. Was this truly the life she wanted? She exhaled shakily. No. It is not worth it. The priest nodded approvingly. Then we must perform the cleansing ritual. What followed was a night of prayers, chants, and sacred rites. The priest burned incense and spoke words that sent shivers down Amaka's spine. As the ritual reached its climax, the necklace, once so brilliant, began to crumble into ash. A piercing wail echoed through the room and then, silence. The weight lifted from Amaka's chest. For the first time in months she felt truly free. But as the priest had warned, her fortunes soon faded. Her restaurants lost their strange allure, and customers slowly dwindled. The money stopped flowing like an endless river. Within weeks, she was forced to sell her grand mansion and move back to a modest home with her family. But there was peace. No whispers, no shadows, no fear. Amaka learned to rebuild, not with magic but with her own strength. And this time she would make sure her success was truly hers. The weeks following the destruction of the magic necklace were the hardest of Amaka's life. For the first time in years, she was no longer a wealthy woman, no longer admired by society, no longer the powerful business mogul she had become. She had to return to the streets where she once sold food, not as a wealthy woman overseeing an empire but as an ordinary vendor. People whispered as they passed her stall, their curiosity barely hidden. Some pitied her while others sneered. See how she has fallen, they said. She had everything and now she is back where she started. Amaka ignored them. She had made her choice. She had learned that true wealth was not in money but in peace of mind, in love, in family. And though she had lost material riches, she had gained something greater, freedom from the torment of the necklace. Her mother remained her greatest source of strength. My daughter, do not be ashamed of honest work, she told Amaka as they cooked together early one morning. Remember, before the necklace you were happy just feeding people with your hands. That joy is still in you. Amaka nodded. It was true. There had been a time when simply selling food and hearing customers thank her for a good meal brought her happiness. Could she find that happiness again? One afternoon, as Amaka was serving a customer, she heard a familiar voice. You have not changed, my dear. She turned and gasped. It was the old woman, the one who had given her the necklace. But this time the woman looked different. There was no mystery in her eyes, no air of magic about her. She simply looked like a tired, elderly woman. You, Amaka whispered. Why did you give me that necklace? The old woman sighed and took a seat. I saw potential in you, child. I saw someone who wanted more from life. But I also saw someone who had to learn a lesson. A lesson? Amaka frowned. You knew what it would do to me? The woman nodded. Wealth gained through unnatural means always comes at a cost. You had to learn that not all that glitters is gold. Amaka stared at her, a storm of emotions swirling in her chest. But why me? The old woman smiled. Because I knew you would be strong enough to walk away. For a long moment, Amaka was silent. Then she sighed and shook her head. I don't know if I should be grateful or angry. Be grateful, the woman said softly. Because now you can build wealth the right way. With that, she stood and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Amaka sat in stunned silence for a while. Then she took a deep breath and got back to work. The past was behind her. She had been given a second chance. And this time she would not waste it. Over the months, Amaka worked tirelessly, not for supernatural riches but for a future she could be proud of. Slowly her small food stall became popular again, but this time there were no magic tricks, just hard work and quality meals. With time she was able to expand to a small restaurant, and from there she grew organically, step by step. She never forgot the lessons she had learned. She never took shortcuts. She never sought unnatural wealth. And most importantly, she never let greed cloud her judgment again. Years later, as she stood before the grand opening of her newest restaurant, one built from her own sweat and perseverance, she smiled. She was truly free. Moral lesson: it is advised to be very careful the kind of gifted you receive from strangers. As a parents always taught your children to receive unusual gifts from strangers. Teach them to discern before accepting any gifts,